You're watching Cable 2.
To the September 11th, 2018 meeting of the Winston-Salem-Forsyth County Board of Education. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation. If you would all please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin our invocation, just want to take a moment to recognize the 17th anniversary of September 11th, 2001, and that really words can't express, I think, our feelings on that. So if you will, just join me in a moment of silence. Lord, as we remember September 11th, 2001, we continue to pray for those who survived that horrible day, for those who lost loved ones, for the first responders, for police, fire, and medical who cared for the hurting. Help us, O Lord, that as we remember the pain, we also remember the great love that filled this nation and filled the hearts of each of us, and may we continue to hold on to that love as a people, as we are created by you, a loving God. And Father, we lift up all of those who are anxious around a hurricane and what that is doing to those in our states and neighboring states and right here. And Lord, we just ask that you protect all of those in the direct path and in the aftermath of that, and also to lift up folks with knowledge to make good decisions and to be safe. And Lord, we ask that you continue to bless our deliberations this evening and all that we do, and those we are recognizing wonderful accomplishments of our students and staff. And Lord, we just ask you to continue to be with this district. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight. Amen. Board members, you've had a chance to review the agenda. I do not believe we have any changes to that this evening. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Mr. Singletary. Second, Mr. Johnson. All in favor? Wonderful. At this time, we will begin some very special recognitions of our junior ROTC state and national recognitions.
Madam Chair Jones, Dr. Emery, school board members, ladies and gentlemen, I am Lieutenant Colonel John Brown, the Director of Army Instruction, and it is truly an honor and pleasure to have the opportunity to come before you today to recognize our outstanding JRTC cadets and their accomplishments. I especially appreciate parents and family members who are here to share in these special recognitions, and I encourage them to come forward for photos as we recognize your son or daughter. The mission of JRTC is to motivate young people to become better citizens. Tonight you will see results of the hard work put forth by students as well as the JRTC instructors at each school. For the past 32 years, cadets from Forsyth County have attended JRTC summer camps. Summer camps are the one few opportunities our cadets have to compete against the best cadets from other Army programs along the eastern region. This past summer, our Army cadets attended JRTC Leadership Challenge at Oak Ridge Military Academy. In addition to summer camp, JROTC leadership and academic teams have the opportunity to compete in the nationally recognized JROTC Leadership and Academic Bowl in order to win a chance to compete in the final championship round at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. Only 40 leadership teams and 30 academic teams out of over 1,600 teams from around the world earned top scores to advance. I'm proud to say that of those teams, 4 are West Forsyth, Atkins, Mount Tabor, and Parkland. They advanced to the championship round with West Forsyth's team leadership placing first nationally and Atkins' academic team placing second in the nation. Truly an outstanding accomplishment that they've been able to do. Madam Chair Jones, if you would, come forward to help us give them a certificate. The J-Lab team, first place leadership in the nation from West Forsyth, Cadet Hannah Ball. Cadet Kayla Davis. Cadet William Kaiser. And Cadet Sarah Lancaster. From Atkins High School, J-Lab team, academic team, second place, Cadet Grace Jarrett. Cadet Rohan Kapaleswari. And Cadet Jalen Matthews. From Mount Tabor High School, J-Lab finalist, Cadet Connor Fodell. Cadet Alejandro Nunez. And Cadet Ashton Sugg. From Parkland High School, J-Lab finalist, Cadet William Brown. And Cadet Jonathan Rumbo.
Right, face, forward, march.
At this time, we will take the time to recognize cadets that have done an outstanding job at JCLC, which is our summer camp. Dr. Emery, if you would come forward to help with certificates.
One step backward. Come on.
From Atkins High School, Cadet Aaron Hall, Distinguished Honor Cadet. Cadet Kairi Samadou, member of the Best Leadership Reaction Corps Squad. Cadet Chance Hackenbrock, Company Distinguished Cadet. Cadet Andrew Allen, first place knockout competition in drill. Cadet Joseph Morgan, second place knockout drill. Cadet Christina Jackson, third place knockout drill. From Carver High School, Dominique Cockerham, company top marksman. From Glenn High School, Cadet Marco Campos, Best Land Navigation Squad. From Parkland High School, Cadet Zachary Kazelbach, Company Ironman. And Cadet Abigail McKay, first place optical scores and company top swimmer. There we go.
Congratulations. Yeah, we didn't want you running off before we got there. Congratulations. Good work. Congratulations. Oh, thank you.
Charge it to their heads and not their hearts.
Ms. Jones.
Squat. Up. Left. Face.
Cadet Omar Jordan, company top swimmer. From Reagan High School, most outstanding cadet in the flight, Kalea McIntyre. Cadet Keegan Jones, most outstanding cadet of the flight. And Cadet Bridget Dale, most improved cadet. From Reynolds High School, company honor cadet, Cadet Darius Tiller. Awardees from West Forsyth High School, company Iron Woman, Cadet Oriana Carroll. Company honor cadet, Cadet Ziona Lancaster. And first place in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, Zachary Prisk.
Right. Face. There we go. Forward. Arch.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Madam Chair Jones, Dr. Emery, school board members, thank you for your continued dedication and commitment to our JROTC program, and I truly appreciate being allowed to come before the board to honor these outstanding young people.
Thank you. We're extremely proud of our JROTC program in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, and for our folks that make that work and the dedication you have to our students and to our student cadets as well. So thank you. Big hand for them again. At this time, I'm going to recognize Matt Dixon. So we have some special recognitions of our staff members for 2017-18 National Board Certification recipients.
Good evening, Chair Jones, Dr. Emery, Board. I'm excited to be here tonight to help introduce and recognize a group of teachers who have gone above and beyond to earn their National Board Certification. First, I'd like to introduce Deborah Troxel, who by day is the instructional facilitator at West Forsyth, and by night and weekend helps these teachers earn their certification through training sessions, working with them on the portfolios, and really is our liaison to make this happen. So first, Deborah, thank you for all the numerous hours you go above and beyond from West to help these teachers earn the certification.
Thank you.
So my name is Deborah Troxel. I was a social studies teacher at West Forsyth High School, and now I'm the instructional facilitator. And like you said, my hobby is supporting National Board Certified teachers. So thank you to the school board, Dr. Emery and Mr. Dixon for recognizing Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools' most recent new and renewed National Board Certified teachers. North Carolina leads the nation in the number of NBCTs. With the addition of our 13U NBCTs, Winston-Salem Forsyth County School has 328 National Board Certified teachers teaching in our classrooms. The teachers joining us tonight have proven themselves to be accomplished teachers. Each spent a great deal of time during evenings, weekends, and holidays to submit a portfolio of evidence proving their deep understanding of how their students learn. The portfolio contains videotaped lessons, student work, lesson plans, and numerous pages of analysis of why the lessons were effective and reflective, and then they reflected on the steps to make the lessons even more effective. How did they prove they were accomplished? It was not by implementing the perfectly planned lesson to perfect students. That would be nice, but that's not how it works. For example, when it comes to cooking, I can successfully follow a recipe, but I'm not a chef. I don't know the difference in baking soda and baking powder. If anything goes wrong with the recipe, whether I'm out of an ingredient or add too much salt, I can't fix it, we order pizza. These teachers planned great lessons, then reality happened. That's when accomplished teachers prove their value. You incorporate a little remediation here, a little enrichment there, like a nose. Re-explain when their heads tilt from misunderstanding. Stall while the website loads. Coax a shy student to explain their brilliant understanding. Then you write a 10-page paper to explain that you called on the shy student for that question because you saw a twinkle of understanding in their eye. You explain how you deliberately chose every word of your lesson and every activity to maximize student learning. To the principals and administrators, thank you for your support of your teachers. Studies show that NBCTs are more likely to stay in education and are more effective in the classroom. Encourage more of your teachers to participate in this valuable process. To the NBCTs, thank you for the work you have done and the impact you've made to educate our students. I love national awards. Research consistently proves students in your class increase learning by an additional 1 to 2 months of instruction and shows evidence of deeper learning at 3 times the rate of students in non-NBCT classes. Now, if our NBCTs will step forward when I call your name. Teresa Bryant, renewed, English teacher at West Forsyth High School. William Collins, renewed, 5th grade teacher at Morgan Elementary. Joy Ham, ESL teacher at Walkertown Middle and High School. Betsy Hanks, 1st grade teacher at Kernersville Elementary. Ashley Hayes, music teacher at South Fork Elementary. Terry Howerton, renewed, biotechnology coordinator at Atkins High. Barbara Kibler, renewed, Whitaker Elementary teacher, kindergarten teacher. Tabitha May, PE teacher at Paisley IB Magnet. Rachel Sanchez, renewed, instructional facilitator at Kernersville Middle. Holly Say, first grade teacher at Brunson Elementary. Nancy Scarborough Black, renewed, EC occupational teacher at Mount Tabor. Carol Taylor, math teacher at Reagan High. And Stephen Wright, renewed, American History 2 teacher at East Forsyth. And me. I renewed too. Thank you. So, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
So sadly, that concludes our special recognitions this evening. We always like to highlight our students and our staff, so we thank them for their extra dedication to their students and to their profession. At this time, we will have public comments on agenda items. I have one person signed up to speak, Rhonda Mays.
Good evening, Chairwoman Jones, the board, and Dr. Emery. Of course, I'm Rhonda Mays. I'm a school social worker in this district, serving as full-time release president of Forsyth County Association of Educators. Tonight, I would like to speak on the ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act accountability release. But first, I would just like to talk about the fact that I listened to a lot of the comments about the report card grades and the outcomes. And even though it's not what we want better, but we also have to acknowledge the growth that was made with our students and the work that our educators put in each and every day, that they continue to show up and they continue to be here and dedicated. One of the things that we all know that makes a difference is relationships. You just spoke about it earlier, about mobility. But it's not just the mobility of our students moving from school to school. It's the mobility of our educators moving from school to school. If we can horn in on those relationships, we talk often about that relationship between the educators in our buildings and our students. But we also have to back up and talk about those relationships with our administration and our educators. When we have schools that are welcoming, that's getting into the ESSA piece. When they're welcoming, people want to be there. That will make a difference in what happens in the classroom. That will make a difference with what our students learn and retain. We have to have those relationships before any learning can take place. When we do that, it's going to make a difference. And it was said last week during the press release. It's about what we do every day. It's not about programs that you can buy. The program is not going to teach the students. It's the educator that is qualified to do the job and that wants to be there. And we have to continue to make certain that they're respected and honored and that our schools are welcoming to our students, our educators, and our community leaders. And together, we will make a difference, and we will get to that level that we want to see all of our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. So board members, that concludes our comments on agenda items. We will move into discussion items. First, we recognize Sarah Harmon and give us a wellness update.
Good evening, Chairman Jones, Dr. Emery, and the board. We have a school wellness policy, Policy 5143, that is an extension of the state policy titled Healthy Active Children. And every other year, we report on a grade level. So this year's report is on secondary schools, both middle and high school, and how they align with not only our district policy regarding wellness, but also how they align with the state. So I wanted to start tonight by talking about our 3 district goals. And we all know that the research, especially most recently from the CDC, suggests that health has an extreme impact on academic achievement. And so we look at moving that needle toward those goals that we've set and redefined. We know that dietary impact is huge. We've had some really great gains when it comes to breakfast participation increases. We've had some things in the policy to encourage folks to take advantage of nutrition education through our child nutrition department. And then we also know that physical activity and movement impacts student achievement and the opportunity for them to engage with the curriculum and refocus their energy. So I just wanted to start by saying that we know when we're talking about our district goals that our healthy students are going to be better learners. And so that evidence is there that in general, if they come in ready to take on the fight of the school day and all that it requires of them, because they've eaten well, they've gotten good breakfast, they've exercised, then they're going to be in a better place. Healthy students generally have better levels of academic achievement, both performance, behavior, and cognitive skills and abilities. We know that schools can influence eating and physical activity behavior because students spend so much time at school, so it's huge for us, and especially if they're eating 2 out of 3 meals and sometimes more than that with us, to be mindful of the wellness policy. And then healthy and successful students are going to build a strong community for years after they leave our K-12 system, and investing in their health will contribute to healthy communities for the long run. And as Rhonda mentioned, we want all of our students to have the opportunity to be healthy and successful. And so our hope is that providing access to healthy food and physical activity will help them be successful academically as well. So within our wellness policy, we have a few goals and things that it addresses. It addresses things about a wellness policy committee, so a committee that meets in order to implement the policy. There's nutrition goals and guidelines. Those are outlined by federal legislation. There's also guidelines for other school-based activities around nutrition, such as fundraising, foods as reward, eating as a positive experience, and nutrition education. And then we see pieces of the wellness policy around goals for physical activity and the way that district staff and faculty support that, and how we measure the policy. And tonight's presentation is one way that we ensure that you all are aware of the measuring and the work that's going on. So we began these surveys in the 11-12 school year. Again, as I mentioned, we alternate every other year. Policy was reviewed most recently in 2014 and is currently under review to hopefully be adopted this fall. So out of the survey for this year with middle and high schools, we had 14 middle schools that participated, 12 high schools, 5 that were a middle and high school combination, and 3 that were no response because they have never previously participated. Not saying that that isn't something we can look at, but I think because they have not participated in the survey in the past, it was a consistent behavior for them not to participate again, and so we'd like to bring them on board, but we know that that will take time. 87% of those schools said that they were aware of this policy 5143. In general at the school, the health and PE teacher was responsible for that. We saw some combination of administrative team, and sometimes there were other people involved, like a school nurse or a Title I engagement coordinator. And then there were, unfortunately, a few schools who did not know who was responsible. And primarily, as we go through the data tonight, we'll see that some of our marks that may be concerning are with new administration. And so one of the things we did this summer is try to have a mandatory session at Summer Leadership Retreat for all new administrators to be versed on this policy and other policies that fall under the work that I do, to make sure that if it's a lack of knowledge, that we provide them with the opportunity to know what the policy says. Part of the policy says their school should have a wellness committee. 15 of the schools that responded said they do, and 16 said they don't. Again, a large portion of that 16 were folks that are new administrators and may not have been as familiar with all the portions of the policy, and also not aware of what a wellness committee can look like. I think sometimes this work can feel very daunting because it feels like it has to be very official, but we know that the committee can be 2 or 3 members who are dedicated to working on student health and wellness. So again, when we get to our successes and opportunities, you'll see this data resurface as a way in which we hope to help get more schools having some type of wellness committee. This question was for middle school only. Part of the Healthy Active Children policy from the state requires that they report on if students are engaging in 30 minutes of physical activity every day, including days without PE. Middle school health and PE is offered on an A-day, B-day schedule, and a lot of our principals say that they're not getting that 30 minutes, and some of that has to do with scheduling. So what we're working on is trying to work with instructional coaches and program managers in other content areas to integrate movement opportunities for students, so that way if they do not have a time set aside in their schedule, it can be integrated into their core curriculum. Schools that said, yeah, we are getting it, these are some of the ways in which they said they're getting it. And hoping then to be able to pass this data along to schools that say they're not, in hopes that if there's something beneficial in here for them that they can implement, or if we have cases where maybe it's not the most beneficial, like walking to and from class, it's well intended but not really getting at what the policy hopes, then again, by having this data, we can help redirect that good intention into something more meaningful. The state also asked if middle school students engage in physical education for 90 minutes a week or more. All of our middle school principals, with the exception of a couple of new ones, report that students do anywhere from 90 to 135 minutes, depending on the A-day, B-day rotation. High school students are required to take the unit of physical education. Dance and ROTC can count toward electives that are required that are not physical education specifically outlined by the state. Again, our one no was a brand new administrator, and so I think maybe there's not that it's not happening, there's just a lack of knowledge about that it is happening. Our schools, middle and high, are doing a really good job of offering physical activity and wellness clubs. Some of the clubs that they reported are extracurricular athletics, but a lot of them said that they know not all students are interested in the middle and high school level at participating in an athletic team. And so they offered other wellness opportunities for them that addressed more than just extracurricular sports. We are very pleased to see that middle and high school folks are not using physical activity as punishment. We know that the state Healthy Active Children policy says that that is not permitted, but we know that sometimes because students enjoy movement, that can be something that teachers, again, well-intending, can take away in hopes that it will cause students to get in compliance with what they're asking. But again, very high rates of schools that are not using it. And then also, sometimes we have schools that will use exercise as punishment. So they'll allow the student to continue to exercise, but under the guise of that it must be in a way prescribed by the teacher, such as walking laps at recess. Again, in middle and high, we don't see that as much, but what we may see is that is a student being held back to complete makeup work or to do other things for being tardy. And so we were pleased to see that most principals say no, exercise is not being used as a punishment. School cafeterias are doing a really good job of displaying information about healthy food choices. So we want to make sure that students have that and see that. We had about a 50-50 split on whether schools use food offerings to reward or incentivize student behavior. Again, I don't think in any of the situations I've sat in when I've spoken with administrators that it's misintended. I think it's affordable. It's something that students really love. It's something that can be easy to have volunteers help facilitate, a pizza party or a cone of ice celebration. And so what we want to do is just make sure that folks have other ideas for how they can reward students that don't always have to involve food. Most schools are reporting that they do not withhold or limit food choices. A situation had been brought up a couple of years ago where some teachers would not allow students to buy certain items at lunch with their money in fear that whatever was in the food item, like say juice or chocolate milk, would exacerbate their behavior. And so we added this question a couple of years ago to make sure that under federal guidelines that no educator is withholding food choices for children, that they are allowed to purchase what they would like to purchase. Several of our schools have school stores, some of those as a part of PBIS, some of those as a part of other initiatives. We want to make sure that due, again, to federal funding and auditing possibilities that folks don't have food in their school store to ensure that there's no perceived competition with child nutrition. So we've asked that. And again, in cases like this, we want to identify where those pockets of people are so that we can try to provide assistance with getting them in compliance rather than it being an iron fist ruling. And by the time they get the information, it may be too late. So our hope with collecting it is that we can identify the trouble spots and then leverage people to go in and help. Schools are reporting some food-related fundraisers. Our elementary numbers, just for recall, we're down to about 34% of elementary schools that report food-related fundraisers. So we still have a pretty significantly higher number of middle and high schools that have food-related fundraisers. And then again, in talking to administrators, I don't think that it's a lack of awareness of the policy or just disregard. It's that food-related fundraisers can be very quick, very easy, and very well-known fundraisers. So we just have to keep providing them with other alternatives. Primarily health teachers provide the health education and nutrition education, but we have seen CTE reporting that in family and consumer science, they cover nutrition education. Science is integrating it in terms of the molecular structure and things like that with nutrition. And sometimes there's others, again, like child nutrition takeovers, nurses, other folks that are working with students. In general, we see that good nutritional choices are encouraged by classroom teachers on a daily basis. Again, maybe not where we want it to be, but I think that it's good that teachers are encouraging, even though that may not be a part of what they perceive as their role in a student's life, to at least be having those conversations with them and making sure they're making good choices. The majority of our schools do not provide vending machine access unless it's after 30 minutes of the dismissal bell. Again, that comes into a child nutrition and a competing entity priority, so we've got to make sure that schools are in compliance with that. A lot of our schools, similarly to our elementary results from last year, are not holding an annual health fair, which is a part of Policy 5143. But we did see that they have large school functions where it could be incorporated. So our hope is that as we leverage community partners and pre-existing events, we can incorporate some of this information in a way that feels organic and tailored to the school, because we know each school has different needs and one size doesn't fit all. So for our successes and opportunities, we have seen a slight reduction in food-related fundraisers over the last 6 years. When we started this, we were at 81%. And so even though 58% isn't, where we want to be, we've seen good success in that reduction, but we have sort of tailored off in the last couple of years and stayed consistent. We do not see a lot of folks withholding or using exercise as punishment. And generally, when we looked at the survey data, the issues that came out across all of those slides were consistently isolated at 1 or 2 schools. And so even though when you look at the data, it may look like, wow, we have a lot of schools not doing it, it was really 1 or 2 schools that had reported not in compliance, not in compliance, not in compliance, which for us I think is a success because it means we can target just a couple of places and hopefully see great improvement in our numbers. We do have opportunities, better communication of that Policy 5143 for new principals, Principals have lots and lots of things on their plate. You all know that. We see it every day. So just making sure that we're being mindful of how we communicate the policy to them, because most people I've spoken with, again, it's not that they don't want to do it. It's that they're trying to prioritize policies, and sometimes this isn't on their radar as well as it should be. We certainly have opportunities to develop school wellness committees. That's one of the things that I'm training more of the health and PE teachers on this year, since we know that they're primarily the one that's designated at their school to lead that work. And then, as I mentioned, we're also working on that middle school piece of increasing daily physical activity by working with curriculum specialists and curriculum coaches to integrate movement into their core instruction. And I wanted to put this up here because we are now operating under the ASCD Whole School, Whole Community, Whole Child pilot as a part of our work with the wellness policy. And so we are looking at what does it take to make a well-rounded student and a well-rounded education, which aligns very well with our new ESSA regulations. And if any of you are on Twitter, and if you follow Rise Camp WSFCS from this summer, it did my heart amazing good to watch all of the things that our irreplaceables we're doing with our students to get them moving and to get them engaged and to get them having fun. So I hope, if you haven't checked out that hashtag, check it out and see some of the things that were posted. And to me, the biggest benefit is that now that didn't stop when August rolled from summer camp to traditional school year. Do you have any questions?
I was wondering about recess in middle school and or high school, because I actually think there's a lot of good research that recess and play and time to be with other people is essential. Do kids still get recess in middle school?
Some schools have it built in. In general, they rebrand it at the middle school level and call it team time. And usually at the schools that have reported that they're utilizing it, they're piggybacking it onto some other block of time like lunch. And so it may be that they have lunch for X number of minutes, and then they have what's called team time. And the students get the opportunity to be moderate to vigorously physical active.
Yeah, and I guess I was thinking of recess in a broader way, and that one of the things about team time and all supervised is that some kids are not getting enough time to actually learn how to play well with the others without adult supervision in quite the same way. So, yeah.
I guess one question I have, and I know you said there were only 1 or 2 schools, and hopefully we're zeroing in on that, where exercise is being withheld as a punishment. That's quite alarming to me, even though it is 1 or 2 schools. And I'm just wondering what we're doing to really work on that. I mean, are we zeroing in on these 1 or 2 schools and letting them know, you know, we're not having this?
We are.
Where do we stand on that?
We are. Leveraging instructional superintendents is going to be huge now that we have those extra hands to be able to oversee the principals and to be able to communicate with them directly, and so it not just be, hey, what are you all doing as a whole, but in particular, we saw that your data indicates that you need some additional support, and how can we make sure you get that?
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
With the fundraisers, the food fundraisers at the high school, are some of them counting their concession stands at athletic events as that?
I had a good feeling they are, because again, when you look at a principal's job, they don't just work from 8 to 4. And so I think some of what we see is concession report.
Okay.
And so what we had thought about for the next survey is even asking specifically, are food-related fundraisers occurring during the day versus after school or during athletic events?
Or, because that, I mean, that would be a huge chunk of that if that's the case, so that would make that pie go a different direction. So,
Yeah.
all right, thanks.
Just one question I had. What you said something about other activities besides athletics in middle school, you're trying to come up, give us an example of what would be one of those other activities.
So at Mineral Springs Middle School, we have a champion health teacher there who is not athletic herself. And so she felt like it was important to offer students a wellness club. And so they have wellness clubs similar to how they would have any other extracurricular club. And students can choose to participate in that. And the focus isn't just on movement, and it's not just on team sport or structured play. It's just on how to take care of yourself. And again, having these pockets of folks where they're doing really great work, she actually presented that work at the Collaborative Learning Conference in August and had 5 or 6 participants. So again, grassroots organic efforts to try to get people who are interested to start doing some of that work in their building in a way that fits what they're doing.
Sarah, the fundraiser issue, and I know we have compliance issues with child nutrition. Is there room for us to look at what foods, because there is opportunity to educate, and I know for 100 years bands have done citrus. To me, that's a healthy way. I don't know that a South Carolina peach sale would bring in a lot of money, but for some of us, so I just wonder, are there limitations there, or if you differentiate those questions as you're talking about with concession stand, might there be a way to get at the what? There's a difference between cookies and can we, because I think all of us are motivated by food. We wouldn't be honest and forthright if we didn't admit that. And so part of that is schools trying to make extra money for all kinds of clubs and organizations, and they're trying to do the best they can with what they know is going to sell.
Yeah, and the benefit and the back end that you all don't see is that when principals submit the report through a Google form, we're able to identify who submitted the form, what school they were from, and what their answer was. So then when things like this come up, if there are questions that we want to follow up on, and we can dive into directly the question on food-related fundraisers and reach out to people who said yes or no to determine a little bit more of what they were thinking when they answered that.
Other comments or questions? Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So as A&D Craft comes forward to discuss our ESSA accountability release and alternative accountability model, we'd like to thank Kevin Sherrill and our technology department and others who, if you'll notice, we have new projectors, new screens. They were installed, I believe, earlier today. So we want to make sure that what we are looking at and we're viewing, you're able to see better. We'll look at trying to upgrade the panels that are above you as well, so that you can easily see the data and some of the smaller print things that we share as you are in the audience, because we appreciate you being here.
Good.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, Dr. Emery, members of the board. Happy to talk to you this evening about the release of the accountability data. Happened last week at the press release that many of you attended at South Fork Elementary. Have an overview of that data and some information on where you can find the details if you're interested in looking closer. The summary is this. District-wide, our results are relatively unchanged. There wasn't dramatic increases or decreases across the district. But we do want to tell you about the reaction that we're taking, some of the steps that we're taking in response to the data across the district. The exciting news for us, though, what we focused on were schools that did demonstrate dramatic increases. And they really fell into 2 categories. One was those schools that have demonstrated year-over-year success. And part of what we're doing is looking at those schools to figure out what they're doing to have that success and trying to figure out how we can replicate that across the district. We talked to those principals, and you'll see here some of the answers that we got, that they limit the number of initiatives in order to maintain focus on improving instruction, which makes a lot of sense. They focus on the fundamentals. Here's a list of those schools that have demonstrated success year over year. What you see in front of you is the growth index. Below a -2 is not meeting. -2 to +2 is meeting expected growth, and over 2 is exceeding expected growth. In many of these schools, you'll see that they exceeded expected growth for the last 3 years. These are schools that are consistently getting great results. Clemens, Mineral Springs, Clemens Elementary and Middle, Flat Rock, Meadowlark, Kennedy, and West. And you heard people like Joey Hurl speak to us last week about the initiatives that they're taking on in their schools. They're focused on PLTs, they're focused on other imperatives like lesson planning, and they're having great success. And this is just an example of how we're measuring that success. There's a second category of schools that caught our attention, and that is schools that had new leaders and got great results when those new leaders came into the building. You can see some of the answers that we got from those principals when we asked, what are you doing to get these results? You see that they're engaging students, that they're engaging students, social emotional needs. SEL is a big buzzword for us today. They're making a school culture centered on what day-to-day activities are going to get the best results for their students. They focus on data-driven decision-making all the time, and when things aren't working, they make changes to adjust. You'll see those schools listed here. I know several of you visited Cook over the last week, and this is a dramatic turnaround that we've seen at Cook. You see that their growth index from a negative 3.86 in 2016 to a positive 3.59. Although it's not reported here, but their proficiency also doubled over that period of time. We're particularly excited to see what's happening at Cook. Gibson Elementary School, their principal's here this evening, and you can see that they went from a negative 0.899 all the way to a 1.991, 1/100th of a point away from exceeding expected growth. South Fork Elementary, Janelle Gatling, who hosted us last week, you see her results there. Northwest Middle and Carver High School. So you see that a lot of these schools got new principals over the last few years, and you know the changes they've made, and you can see right here the results of those changes. And again, as a district, we want to replicate those results across the district. So here's a look at district-wide results. You'll see the percentage of schools that received a school performance grade of an A, B, C, D, or an F. And the story is that didn't change much in the 2018 year. It was very similar to what we saw in the 2017 year. By the way, the school performance grade is made up 20% growth and 80% proficiency. So that's how that's calculated. Another measure that we pay a lot of attention to is the cohort grad rate. This is an area where our community has come around us, and we've seen great success over the last 10 years, and we're very happy about the results that we've gotten. Folks in our schools plus folks in our community working really hard to help us get that great result. This year, rather unexpectedly, we found out about halfway through last year that there was a change in the way that the cohort grad rate was measured. The change is this: students that come to us off track, perhaps they're supposed to be seniors, they only have enough credits to be sophomores. Previously, they were not counted in the cohort grad rate for that school, but that changed. And so now, regardless of when a student comes to us, how many credits they have, the expectation is that we will get those students to graduate on time. And because of that change, we expected a decrease. That decrease was realized, and you see it here. That was our first year since 2008 that we saw a decrease in our cohort graduation rate. And a lot of that can be attributed to a change in the rules. There are schools, many schools, you see them listed here, that have over a 90% cohort graduation rate. Atkins High School Early College had a 100% graduation rate. Middle College, Mount Tabor, Kennedy, Reagan, and West. And so again, we can learn lessons from these schools of what they're doing to get high levels of graduation. So what's next? How are we responding to this information? Well, last week we announced the creation of 3 design teams. It's the responsibility of these teams to examine what's happening across the district and to figure out how we can scale up initiatives that are working, also how we can measure and ensure that the imperatives are carried out. Let me be a little more specific. These are those 3 teams. One team is going to focus on monitoring, support, and accountability. That's led by Dr. Cato and myself. And there will be a new system for monitoring how schools implement the imperatives. Second team is one that's focused on instruction and innovation. This team is going to develop a new central office organizational structure. So you know about instructional services and the supports they provide to our schools, and we're going to focus on how we can get the most bang for our buck in those supports. And finally, a third team is going to focus on equity, access, and acceleration. You know that closing the gap is a big focus for us year over year, and this team is going to focus on how we can provide access and acceleration opportunities for our underperforming subgroups. These teams have a 60-day timeline, and that started last week. So the first week in November, you're going to hear from these teams with their specific plans that will be implemented beginning in November. And these teams have been branded with the help of Brent Campbell and the Office of Communication. You'll see this logo when you hear about the 3 design teams. Imagine, in fact, I'm going to consult my notes here. It's an acronym that stands for Innovate, Monitor, Accelerate, Grow, Instruct, Nurture, and Excite. And so that's really the work, kind of a nice visual to capture the work of those 3 design teams. We welcome the input of the community. There's a link here that the community can click on to give us some feedback on this work that we're doing around these design teams. So I welcome any questions from the board. Yeah.
It was my understanding that each of the 3 design teams were supposed to have embedded in them a very deep look at culture and communication. And if you look at the schools that are successful, that is not ever an afterthought, that is an essential.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that when we're talking about that, that we're looking at culture and climate absolutely. Because again, I think that that tends to be an afterthought as opposed to an essential.
Right, right. And culture epitomizes students' experience, doesn't it? So this social emotional learning piece is...
It's student experience, but it's also the people in the building's experience.
That's right.
It's our staff's experience. It's parents' experience. Culture is all of the expectations that we either fill or don't fill. And one of the problems with accountability is that it can either be a sweet thing or it can be a very punitive thing. And I think it's critical that we look at culture and, again, making schools places that people actually really want to be.
Agreed.
And so it's not just agree, I want it in writing.
Thanks. And that's an important point that, you know, hold these 3 groups accountable for what it is they're going to do, right, to create the kind of culture that are schools where kids want to learn and teachers want to teach.
And I feel like I'm a really annoying person, and perhaps people who know me think that as well. But I want to make sure that it's in our written language and not, oh, yes, we assume it, because I've been on the board for many, many years and keep talking about culture and climate as an essential piece, and it needs to be in our written presentations and not just, yes, of course, because what you value is what you write down.
Thanks.
Other comments or questions?
I do have a question. Help me to understand something in relation to this particular evaluation. Because when I go to the North Carolina school report card and I look at 2015-16, I see that only 11% of our schools exceeded growth. But then when I look at 2016-17, that number went up to 31.9%. So and when I look at 2015-16, we had 48.6% met. This year, the number of schools that met went down to 44% because of the increase in the number that exceeded. And if you go and look at those that didn't meet in 2015, almost 40% of our schools did not meet, but in 2016-17, only 22% of our schools. So I'm getting mixed signals when I look at this, and then when I look at our school report card showing that we have such a growth in the number of schools that exceeded growth. So can you help me to understand this?
Sure. So when you look at the school performance grade, remember that includes both growth and proficiency. And the only thing I reported for you here tonight were specific schools that either showed an increase in growth over time or consistently exceeded expected growth over time. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I trust your numbers there that we've seen that. But that's right. And it speaks to our larger point here is that we need to see consistent year-over-year increase in the schools exceeding expected growth and meeting, and a consistent decrease in the schools that are not meeting expected growth.
And that was one of the things that I wanted to point out because it appears that information in the community, it appears that I understand that on one level, we aren't seeing increases that we would want to see, but on another chart, we're seeing schools who were not making any growth or meeting any metric who are now exceeding that, and I felt like it was worthy of being mentioned.
If I might add, we also keep balancing this issue between proficiency and growth, Mr. Singletary, and I think that we have, as a district, tried to recognize that we don't always control where kids are when they enter the system, but it's our job to grow them. And so the metric of growth has really been one we've put a lot of emphasis on. Our Inspire 340 schools are those low-performing schools in our district, and this year 13 out of 15 of them either met or exceeded growth. That is huge. And well, the folks in the schools deserve the applause. They're doing the work day in and day out, and it's hard work. The proficiency scores may give them an F. I mean, we can just say it, but we've all been in those schools, and we know they are not F schools. It's a number. Cook, which we highlighted here tonight, is still an F school. It's doubled its proficiency in 2 years. You saw it's gone from a negative into a positive. So I think what we're trying to say is, as we find these strategies that are helping accelerate growth, how do we replicate them? How do we do a better job of supporting them across the district? So I appreciate you bringing it up. We aren't satisfied with where things are, but I do think that the important issue is when we meet growth, we're doing what the state expects us to do. We're getting a year's growth for a year, and where we're exceeding growth, kids are growing more. And so one of these teams, the Equity, Access, and Acceleration's job is to look at how do we accelerate more kids? How do we get exceeds growth for individual kids, particularly these that live in some of the gap outcomes that we need to be able to improve for them. So I appreciate you asking it. I also would welcome anybody in our community to visit our schools. The most heartbreaking thing sometimes about the numbers is that when you're out there and you see how hard people in classrooms are working every day, including these children who are doing remarkable work daily, we expect our outcomes will look better. And you know, it's not okay to say the state didn't grow, and so there we are, we're right in there with where the state is, because these are our kids in our community and we want them to grow. And but we understand there are challenges inherent in the work, and so we keep working. And I think the whole idea behind these design teams is what we've been doing. We creep a little bit and get a little bit, but can we kind of blow this whole thing up and do something completely different that has a different focus, more on acceleration and innovation? Can we restructure our central office so that support is very targeted and differentiated to what schools need? And so, right, it's worth the shot at trying something completely different, and hopefully we can support folks out there doing this work every day in a better way, in a way that's meaningful for our kids and families.
And I appreciate you elaborating on that, because one of the things that, even though we're not where we want to be, parents and the community need to realize that we have hardworking students, hardworking teachers who are making progress in schools. And then, like you said, what do? We take the progress that we get, we find our best practices, and then we share those with other schools. So thank you.
Mr. Johnson.
So I'm glad you were bringing that to this board's attention, Dr. Embry, because I'm confused myself. You saying one thing and the state is saying something else. And we need to know as a board, when these people call in, how to explain what's going on. Yeah, we need to get together and learn this, because, you know, the only thing I see is the state said we failed. And here the phone started jumping off the hook. So how can you pass and also fail? You know, that's very confusing to the public out here as what we're doing. And we need to explain this as much as we can. We don't want to put our children down. We will do all we can to elevate them, make sure they are progressing.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Vice Chairman Barr.
Yeah, and Mr. Kraft, thank you so much for bringing this information. And I do feel positive concerning where we're headed. But I do in the future, I'm looking forward to hearing about, you know, those schools that demonstrated success. I think you put that on your slide, and exactly what did they do.
Sure.
And then especially when you put a new principal in a building with a school that may have opportunities, what did they do? And I'm just research oriented.
Yep.
If someone moved it, I want to know exactly how and why.
Yep.
And also, I think going forward, as we look at these new design teams, that we need to be really careful about, and you guys know where I'm going, goals. We just need to be careful about how we are constructing and creating our goals. Because when you say to me, we are going to do close the gap, and we've been looking at that for a while, and you say to me that we're going to increase third grade reading, and we're looking at that for a while, and you talk about the graduation, then what comes up to me after a period of time is, what are we doing about that? So I just think going forward, I feel positive. I think we are moving in the right direction, Dr. Emery, with the design teams. I'm glad that we do have some evidence of success, but I think everything in a business, in a district, it runs by those SMART goals and those strategies that are under those goals. So that's it.
Thank you.
Additional comments, board questions? Thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you. All right, I have a second topic for you. This one's a little more brief. You're familiar with this. You've heard this one before, the alternative accountability model. Every year you have to approve for our non-traditional schools whether or not they will fall under the alternative accountability model. It's slightly changed this year as a result of the new ESSA accountability model, and I'll explain those changes to you here briefly. This year, all schools, traditional and non-traditional, have to receive a school performance grade, that is an A through F grade. They can, if you so choose, also receive a alternative progress designation. Those designations are progressing, maintaining, or declining. As we spoke to our non-traditional schools, they asked that they would be able to receive the alternative progress designation in addition to the school performance grade. In addition, some schools, in fact in our district there's just 2 that may have insufficient data. The reason for that is the number of students that are testing in a given year. And so in the case of a non-traditional school that has insufficient data, it's your choice to either have that school receive the grade where the highest percentage of their students originate, or to use 3 years of data to determine that school's school performance grade. As we talk to the leaders of those 2 schools, it's their request that you would allow them to use the school performance grade from the school where the highest percentage of their kids originate. So as a result, for these non-traditional schools, we're recommending to you that you consider option B. That would be that these schools would get an alternative school progress designation in addition to their school performance grade. Those schools are Carter, Children's Center, Main Street, Kingswood, Lawrence, and Special Children's School. These 2 schools, the Children's Center and the Special Children's School, may have insufficient data, fewer than 30 scores. And so at the request of these 2 schools, and it's our recommendation, is that if these schools next year have insufficient data, that their school performance grade will be based on the school that sends them the highest percentage of their students. And so you'll have an opportunity to consider that and vote on it later this evening. Any questions about those 2 recommendations?
I'm sorry, I can't be quiet about this, so I just want to, for our community and our board, to draw a couple of what I believe are ironies about this. These are schools created to serve the unique needs of children who have disabilities, children who don't learn in the same way as others, children who are behind, children who have been involved with the court system, to give them additional opportunities to learn. And up until this year, that designation of progressing was the grade, because these are not traditional children or schools. To me, the absurdity of requiring them to have an A through F is just another way to make it look like schools aren't doing the work they're supposed to be doing. And so I need to be on record with that. The second irony or absurdity is, if you look at the options for how to determine that, they have absolutely nothing to do. So we're picking the one that gets us the best number. Let's be honest. The best number is looking at where do those kids all come from, what are their home schools, which of those would give us the highest number, and so that makes us look better. And I'm not opposed to us looking better, but I just think we really have to be transparent about the fact that that has really nothing to do with the progress that the children in those schools are making. It's just the way the state decides to put some kind of label on it. And so I would encourage all of us to, again, look at this as part of the system that all of our schools are labeled by, and not to sound defensive, all of our kids need to grow, and we want them to grow, and we want to do everything we can to help them. But this, to me, is just sort of a really big example of why this system is really not a good measure of how children grow. To take a school where every child in the school is on an IEP, which means individualized education plan, which means they all have individual goals that get measured every year on their own progress, and then label it an F, is really not a service to our children. And so we can't do anything about it. We'll make the best of it. We want you to vote for this. I'm not trying to discourage you, but I do think it's important that we call out what it is.
And wouldn't it be accurate that the school that sends the most children could be defined by 1 or 2 kids?
Yes, that's
so it would have nothing really to do with the homeschool at all. It would, and I'm sure it changes every year based on the needs of the children. So it's very arbitrary.
And I would just say, Dr. Emery, that when you started out what you just said, you listed several adjectives that I think could describe a large majority of our children in our district who have individual learning plans, and teachers. We have teachers who teach to the needs and the abilities of each individual student. So I think, that just goes along with the absurdity of this, yes, but the absurdity of the fact that it's 80% proficiency that we're graded on and 20% growth instead of the opposite way. Just want to give you food for thought on that.
And this came from the State Board of Education, correct? So that was a mandate from the State Board of Education. Okay. Just wanted to make sure who we were calling out. So.
And I think to be
Appreciate
fair,
that.
we need to say that they are doing that to be in compliance with ESSA. So
That's right.
The graduation rate changes and these changes that apply to alternative schools. And Andy, I'm correct?
That's exactly right. So the state had that alternative model designation year over year. You voted on that in the past, but the addition of the school performance grade for these non-traditional schools is to align with the federal legislation under ESSA. And that was a kind of a back and forth dialogue between the state and the federal government until they landed on what you're voting on tonight.
Can I ask one other question? The survey results that the public can weigh in on, who's reviewing those?
Sure. All district leaders are reviewing those, so the Title I office is collecting that directly. And then those 3 design teams that you see, the executive cabinet, will all review those results.
Other questions or comments? Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
This time I'll recognize Dr. Carol Montague Davis. So we have some discussion around educational testing services contract for Carver High School.
One of the schools that is doing
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Good evening, Chairman Jones, Dr. Emery, Board of Ed members. Thank you for having me to present this evening. And yeah, we are one of those schools, the high school that had the highest growth among all high schools. Yay! We are not where we want to be, but we are working very hard. We were 2 points from seeing the C, so we did a lot of growth last year, all complimentaries of our staff. So thank you so much. So to say all that, I'm here to talk about this contract that we have here tonight. Educational Testing Service. It's a contract that we got a SIG grant, School Improvement Grant, about 3 years ago. And this is a service provider that provides tutoring services. That provides coaching services for our staff. And what is paid for out of it is 1 leadership coach. I have a coach. We have 3 content area coaches, which is English, math, and science. We have a 2-day summer institute, which this summer we worked on literacy across the curriculum, writing across the curriculum, and we have incorporated that this year. What we have decided to do different this year is that we wanted to front load, which means that they would spend most of their time in the building. During September would be 3 days, October 3, November 2, and we front loaded at the beginning of the year so they can provide us the services to help us in that way. And so some of the months where we have a lot of holidays and things, we only have them coming in one time during that time. So each one of the coaches will give us 16 days of services. Some of the things that they provide us services in is coaching our teachers. They do a lot with cooperative learning around, and they do a lot of data talk, the feedback, and modeling with our teachers as well. And the way that we discriminate use of coaching services different from our coaching services that we receive from the central office, that we have specific subject areas and certain teachers that they work with. So that way we are able then to monitor their impact that they have on our staff within our building. So any questions about the contract?
Yeah, I was just going to say, can you highlight a couple of aha moments or?
Well, last year we started kind of late,
yes,
because we did not get the contract approved before, I think it was February. So we started a little late last year. Some of the aha moments is that we have worked with our math coach, has worked with our Math 3 teachers, and they're helping to build common assessments. And so those are some things that we didn't have, those type of services to work with. The science coach had come in and helped with our chemistry classes and our earth environmental science classes, because our system coaches work mostly with our EOC classes. And so that way that we're pulling our rigor up. So they're helping to build a rigor in the other classes that we have. And the summer institute was really well done. Our teachers come in, all of the staff comes in, and they give us our training, and then we carry that over into our school improvement plan.
Because you know we're all interested in what are the ones that are successful, Carver, highest growth. You know, what are you doing and how can we replicate it? That's why I ask.
Oh, that's a good question. It's not one silver bullet.
Right.
We work a lot on culture there, and I can't take all the credit, because when I got to Carver last year, they were already on the upward swing. So the only thing that we're doing is continuing that momentum of moving it on in that way, the same direction. That the kids are believing in themselves, the teachers are believing that the students can do it, and removing all excuses. And it's all about the culture of belonging and letting students have their voice and appreciate what they do and celebrate the small wins, which is so important for everything that you do. If you wait till the end to celebrate, then you would have no celebrations. So you have to celebrate the small wins as you go and show the students that you believe in them, that you know that they can do it, and you have that heart for them. And we're going to take you where you are, and we're going to meet you, and we're going to grow you to your potential. And that's what all of our teachers and administrators in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County do with every student in our system. They are hard workers. They do great things for all of our students. Thank you for giving me that commercial.
Can I say one quick thing? Dr. Montague, because of the results that you're getting at Carver, I can say yes to your request.
Oh, I like that.
Easily.
Let me see if I can find another budget that's in here tonight. Thank you so much.
But I say that to say I think we like results, not just to say yes to contracts, but yes when we see that principals and teachers and staff are getting those results.
And I say thank you for saying yes, for letting me go back to do the best job that I've ever had in my life, which is being the principal of Carver High School. Thank you.
Thank you. So Rusty Hall, one of our instructional superintendents, is coming forward to discuss, with all principals, great. Okay, so we have Gibson Elementary, Louisville Elementary, and Morgan Elementary to all discuss a contract board for curriculum associates.
Chairwoman Jones, Dr. Emery, members of the board, thank you for having us here today. And as you said, we have some of our wonderful principals here to share as we bring forth the 2018-2019 iReady contracts for this school year. As a reminder, this is, I think, our third year of coming in front of you guys, and we have about 27, 28 schools who are requesting iReady for this coming up school year. All of the instructional superintendents have reviewed plans and reviewed data to see if iReady is fitting into the instructional program at each of our schools. But as a reminder, iReady offers a key into reading and math for our students. Students take a diagnostic three times a year, beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, that kind of gives us a sense of where our students are in reading and math. Schools get detailed reports of the domains or areas of focus that need to happen for our students. It directs teachers and other staff to possible areas of interventions, supplemental support for these students, and provides support in grouping students around specific skills or area of need. Not only does it offer diagnostic, it offers instruction, and so students get to engage in a fun, interactive way of learning in tutorials, differentiated independent practice. It's individually student-paced based on those results, and as students perform better, they get bumped up to the next level and so forth. The lessons are fun and engaging, and I can testify to that for my own daughter, who fights to get on iReady a lot. And so if it engages her, then I know it's an engaging program. It can be used during class, out of class, as part of guided math groups, guided reading groups. There are just endless ways. A lot of our middle schools use it as part of their study skills class. So it's very versatile in the way our schools use that. It's used across the country and across our state. It's aligned to our curriculum standards, and it's aligned to the end of grade test. There's frequent professional development, on-site and virtual, for our staff to not only use the program, but be able to read the reports and determine what needs to happen next. And then we usually have a yearly data review meeting with iReady and our district leadership to look at the correlation between our data. So that's enough from me, and I want to turn it over to three of our amazing school leaders who have had great success and are digging into the iReady and want to share their data and their work. So we have Angie Choplin here from Louisville, Ramona Warren from Morgan, and Glenn Starnes from Gibson. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Good evening. Thanks for letting us come talk about iReady. Try not to talk too long because I love iReady. Let's see. So where did he go? Oh, go backwards. Okay. So this evening we kind of divided up how we were going to talk to you about it, but Rusty said, could we show you some reports and some different things? There are a lot of reports that iReady gives the administrators and the teachers, but the reports that we are showing you tonight are the ones that we use the most in our professional learning teams. And so since we at Louisville have been using iReady for 2 years, we decided to use the intervention screening data. As you can see, it's sort of a chart that teachers can get. It looks like what we use with RTI as well. And we have been using the first year in 16-17 with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and then the data you'll see for 17 and 18 was whole school, because we had so much success with our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders that the lower grade teachers wanted in on that. So as you can see, at the beginning of the year when we did the diagnostic with the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, about 74% of our children were on level in math at the beginning of the year. And by the end of the year, when we use it with fidelity, that means we follow the 45 minutes a day, we use the reports, the teachers are doing what they're supposed to. By the end of the year in May, 96% of our children were on grade level. And so that was really exciting for us. So going up, right? See if I can get it right this time. So last year, this was exciting for us. We did start in kindergarten, so this first of the year data was 1st through 5th grade because we wanted to give our kindergartners a little bit of time to get used to using computers. So at the beginning of the year, 148 students. You can see about 41% were on grade level, where at the beginning of the year, you know, they knew the curriculum. By the end of the year, when we tested, 91% of our children were where they were supposed to be. And we felt like that was a strong correlation because at our grade level growth, with our grades 3, 4, and 5, 89% of our students in math were on grade level. So once again, with the fidelity of using it every day, the teachers checking it in PLTs, teachers talking about the data a lot, we were successful. In reading, as you can see, it's the same thing. We grew from beginning to the end of the year. And then last year's data was the same. We started 59%, and at the end of the year, 91% of our students were on grade level from using the program. And as Rusty said, the children love it. The parents love it. They can use it on the weekends. It's really a great program. So Ramona and I work together at Gibson, Morgan, I'm looking at Glenn. We kind of do the same thing because we do our training together. So she's going to talk to you about what we do with our teachers after they see the data.
So between that beginning of the year screening and the end of the year screening, there's a lot that goes into the classroom instruction using the iReady. So we use the iReady data to help us create our small groups in addition to getting DIBELS and TRC information for reading. We use it to help develop children's PEPs, their personal education plans, and use it as a resource for the children to reach their goals on their PEPs. At both Louisville and Morgan, we use it to help create our tutoring groups for before and after school tutoring, and then we use it as a resource during the tutoring to differentiate the instruction for the children within those tutoring groups. The online component is the component that most people see, and that's the largest used component of it, but there is also a print component that comes with the program. So if we have a child not doing well in a certain area, not only can we give them additional time with the computer program, we can print off lesson plans for them to use in small group instruction as well. And during the day, we allot time during small group instruction for the reading and for the math and guided reading and guided math time. And the children rotate through iReady as if they rotate through other stations within that reading and math time. Oh. That's yours. Am I going the wrong way too, Glenn?
No.
Okay. Okay, I had slides that had other types of data in here so you could see a different type of data, and the slides that I had showed that when the children take the diagnostic at the beginning of the year, it gives them a goal of the growth they should make until the end of the year, and then the chart will show you the percentage of children that made the growth or made their target, and you can break it down by school, class, or by individual students. So the data within iReady can go whole district, my understanding is, then it can go school, it can go grade level, classroom, and to the individual child. No, I didn't bring a print copy. Oh, thank you. Now you're gonna have me switch from this too. Oh, wow. That is impressive, isn't it? And so this is what the chart looks like for math and for reading. And so the math show you that, I can't see this, so 116% or 110% of children met their target. And so they went above and beyond. And then it breaks it down by grade level. Our kindergarten, like Louisville's kindergarten, we wait because it's just not developmentally appropriate to put them on Chromebooks and computers to try to take a diagnostic in August or September, so we do wait for them to take that diagnostic. If I take it away, is it
gonna So if you look at the report for Gibson, this is actually our second year of using iReady. You'll notice that in year one, obviously, if you look at the beginning of the year, our triangle is upside down as you think about MTSS. In comparison to the other two schools who presented. And so at the beginning of the year, we had about 10% of our children who were proficient in the area of math. However, at the end of the year, we had about 52% of our scholars who were proficient, and so that's about 40% or 40 percentage points difference between beginning of the year and end of year. As you look at year two, For math, you'll see very similar data. We had about 40% of our children who at the beginning of the year were not proficient or were not green, but again, at the end of the year, about 55% of our babies were proficient. If you look at the area of reading, you'll see that very similar data. Our triangle is upside down, and so only 71 scholars, which is representative of about 18% of our babies, were proficient in the area of reading. This again is year one, but then at the end of the year, about 48%, almost half of the population in our building. And again, we use iReady K-5, although it's maybe not developmentally appropriate for kindergarten. We adjust the number of minutes that we use in kindergarten so that it's not a full 45 minutes. We start off the year with them in 30 minutes a week in comparison to 45 minutes because we know that our babies come in the door with so many areas of deficiency, and so we want to definitely meet them where they are. Year two, in the area of reading, we had 16% of our scholars who came in the door proficient, and we ended the year with about 47%. And so you'll see that each year we had about 50% of our babies at the end of the year who were proficient, which is a direct correlation to where we are as we think about growth in our building. Any program is only as good as its user, so we definitely celebrate our teachers for the work that they do in running reports, running child profile reports each week, and allow for the teacher to see what those areas of deficiency are and tune in inside the classroom. Our interventionists can pull those reports to see what the areas of growth would be. And then also every Monday in our building we run a usage report to see how many minutes the teachers have actually had kids on the program. And so in POTs each week we can say, hey, teacher A, teacher B, I noticed you were only on 12 minutes a week, or this kid was only on 12 minutes a week. Per the program, they should be on 45 minutes a week. It won't work if they're only on 12 minutes a week. So we really need to be sure that the children are on the program and using the program based on what the model says. And so we really think that iReady is what has allowed for us to see some of the growth that we have received, in addition to just some very simple, everyday teaching one-on-one practices that we went back to. Any questions?
I'm really glad you're getting great results. I was a little concerned about the visuals because they're not accurate representations of percentages. And I thought, gosh, if a student did that, you would be really upset. They obviously aren't understanding math very well at all. So I just wonder, why is it that they...
Same number of children.
No, but if you look at it, they're just really inaccurate.
So it's a poor copy-paste job.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
Okay. I just would hope that,
From one program to PowerPoint.
And part of it is just that I think Americans often don't have a really good sense of relative value.
Absolutely.
And I would hope that we could get that better. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
But we do want to point out that the numbers are correct.
Right. It's just 16% is a different line.
Right. Yes.
And 47% should be like halfway down.
Yes.
And that brings up a good point that you cannot print those charts side by side, pull them up.
No,
But iReady is very receptive to our feedback, and when we say, oh, we need this, then they go with curriculum associates, will make changes to their program.
It has to do with just being an educational system and being accurate.
Yes.
Other questions or comments, board members?
Well, it is great to see you bringing this up to us, because Dr. Emery had a conversation last year about how staff was going to work to vet programs that our schools were using. So it's good to see you bringing the information so that we can actually see that where these funds are being allocated, we are seeing progress. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rotc.
Vice Chairman Barr, our Finance Committee report.
Oh, okay.
You're up.
I was thinking about already. In our Finance Committee meeting, which was a lively, interesting meeting, but a good meeting, we compared the 2018-2019 proposed budget to the budget from 2017-2018 and the audited budget from the 2016-2017. We talked about the savings in this year's budget, which we were glad to hear about, and using money from rent at Middle Fork and placing it in a 5-year money market. Also, some good news for the teachers out there. We did discuss a one-time teacher bonus of $300 using the $305,750 savings in our 2019 budget and money from fund balance. So that we'll continue to discuss that and look at it. Also, we discuss other things such as land options, discussions on livable wages in Forsyth County. And that was it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bard. That concludes, Board, our discussion items for this evening. That moves us into action items. The first item for consideration is the approval of the alternative accountability model. Do I have a motion to approve?
I grudgingly make the motion.
Yeah.
Right, I understand.
Second.
Okay. First by Ms. Montsinger, second by Ms. Parker. Any discussion, Board? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, I couldn't see everybody's hand. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Consider approval of educational testing services contract. Do I have a motion to approve? Vice Chairman Barr, second. Mr. Johnson, any discussion or comments? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of curriculum associates consultant contracts we just heard about. Do I have a motion to approve? Ms. Calvert-Hayes, second. Mr. Singletary, any discussion, comments? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of the Forsyth County contract with the Forsyth County Department of Public Health. Do I have a motion to approve? Ms. Taylor, second. Mr. Johnson, any discussion or comments, Board? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of Bayeda home health care contract. Do I have a motion to approve? I have a first by Mr. Singletary, second Ms. Parker. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of Maxima Healthcare Services, Inc. contract. Do I have a motion to approve? Mr. Johnson, do I have a second? Mr. Singletary, any comments or questions, Board? All in favor? Motion carries. And consider approval of the Premier Home Health Care contract. Do I have a motion to approve? Mr. Singletary, do I have a second? Mr. Johnson, any questions, comments? All in favor? Motion carries. That concludes our action items for this evening. We have 2 items on the consent agenda. Approval of meeting minutes for the August 28th, 2018 meeting and approval of the general personnel report. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? So Mr. Singletary, second. Ms. Calvert-Hayes, all in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. We now have public comments. We have several.
Thank you for joining us on your school channel, Table 2.